Hi there, friends. Oh my goodness. I don't know when you're watching this, but boy, I'm feeling a little bit tired. Are you feeling tired? Oh my goodness, I think I need to go take a nap. Hmm. Sometimes I need to take a nap when I'm feeling really tired. It might not be bedtime, it might be the afternoon, and if I didn't sleep well the night before, I need a nap so that I can feel better. Well, in our story today, the main character, also known as the protagonist, Gerald, is really sleepy and he's also a little bit cranky. And so the title of this book is I Will Take a Nap because Gerald decides that the best way to improve his mood is by getting some shut eye. And so shut eye is just an expression meaning you shut your eyes and you're sleeping. And so shut eye is a synonym for, or an idiomatic expression meaning you get some sleep. And so that is what Gerald needs. And when I take a nap when I was little, sometimes people like to sleep with stuffed animals. And so it looks like Gerald has a bunny rabbit that reminds me a little bit of Nuffle Bunny, which is another story that Mo Willems wrote. And here's Piggy, and Piggy looks like she's wide awake. Unlike Gerald, who has eyelids that are really heavy and trying to close, she's looking at him with her eyes wide open, and she's like, wonder what he's doing. So it looks like only Gerald needs a nap, and he also, in addition to his stuffed animal, he also has a blanket. And when Miss Firestone was little, I had a pink blanket that I had to sleep with every single night. And if I didn't have my pink blanket, I had a really hard time going to sleep. And so, if ever I lost it, I would make my parents search for it so I would feel safe to go to sleep. And it looks like Gerald has the two things he needs to go to sleep. So, I want you to make some predictions. Do you think Gerald will sleep well? Do you think he'll wake up feeling refreshed and happy and ready to go again? Do you think he might have some dreams while he's asleep? What kind of dreams do you have when you're sleeping? I would love to find out. So let's get into our story for today. I will take a nap. And so you can see lots of pictures of Gerald. He's all snuggled up. He's got his trunk resting on one of his front legs and he's hugging Nuffle Bunny. Maybe it is Nuffle Bunny. We'll have to read and find out if that's right. At least it's a bunny rabbit with his other hand, and it looks like his tail, when he's sleeping, his tail is twitching back and forth. Do you ever twitch in your sleep, or have you ever watched a cat or a dog, like a pet of yours? Sometimes pets twitch when they're sleeping too. So it looks like Gerald is pretty comfortable. And so he's made this decision that he's going to share with the reader. He says, I will take a nap. And Piggy isn't with him when he decides to take a nap. She's over here. And it looks like she's not very close to him. And the reason I can tell that is because there's lots of different hills. So she's at least three hills away from Gerald when this story begins. And Gerald starts by saying, I am tired. And I can tell he's tired by his body language. His shoulders look droopy, so kind of sagging down. And his eyes, they have shadows underneath them and kind of wrinkles. Your eyes get like that when you're really tired, and kind of your eyelids are having a hard time staying open. And so he's kind of squinting at the reader and he's like, oh, I am tired. And he says, and cranky. So often when we get too tired, one of the emotions we also experience is crankiness. And cranky just means like kind of frustrated or easily irritated. So like things that might not bother you when you're feeling good really bother you when you are feeling cranky. So it's not a very good idea to talk to someone when they're cranky. It's a much better idea to give them some space to let them calm down until they're ready to talk to you. So he says, I'm tired and I'm cranky. And then, so that was the problem. He's tired. That's the first part. And then he's also cranky. And so Gerald, he thinks of a good solution. He says, I will take a nap. And you can tell he's getting excited about that idea because he knows that that will help him feel better to take that nap. And so he walks off. And I want you to make a prediction. What kind of thing do you think that Gerald might use to take a nap? Do you remember what you saw on the front cover? What do you take when you go to take a nap? What kinds of things do you want to have by you? I told you what I like to have. So he goes and he says, I like to nap. So he's gotten his Nuffle Bunny and the blanket all ready for his nap, and he says, I am happier when I am rested. So he recognized that the problem, his crankiness, was coming from just being tired. And often when Miss Firestone, when I don't sleep very well, I'm crankier too. And so it's not a good idea to have me continue to stay awake. It's a much better idea for me to get some sleep. And so here Gerald is. He's spreading out his blanket and he's got his rabbit. And I talked to you a little bit in the beginning that I was making a prediction that Gerald might have some dreams. And so Gerald, he hopes he has dreams too. And he says, I hope I have good dreams. So good dreams, you kind of wake up and you're like, oh, that was such a great way to spend my night. And a nightmare, nightmares are not as much fun. Nightmares are bad dreams, dreams that are scary, where things that you don't like happen. But even if you do have a nightmare, a bad dream, it's okay because you will wake up. And as soon as you wake up, you will realize that you were just dreaming and it wasn't really happening. So here's Gerald. I hope I have some good dreams. And it's kind of hard to see, but I want you to look. So here's his thought bubble. And his thought bubble today is kind of a pale green. So this is his dream. So it looks like he's starting to dream. His eyes are closed. He's already asleep. And you can see it on this page too. The top corner is still a little bit white. And the rest of the page, the background is now green. And this is easier to see in person than in the read aloud. So just take my word for it. You can kind of see right there the boundary. And so Gerald's dreaming. And Piggy comes over to him and she says, Gerald! And right now, Gerald is smiling. But if you get woken up, does that make you feel happy? When my mom tried to wake me up when I was your age, I would get very angry because I liked to sleep. I like to sleep in. I don't like to wake up early in the morning. And so when I'm sleeping, it's not a good idea to try to wake me up. And it's not a good idea to try to wake up Gerald either. He says, what, where, when, how? So he wakes up and he's starting to ask lots of questions like Quincy Questioner. He's trying to figure out what is going on. He just settled down for a nap. So I wonder, I have a question like Quincy Questioner. Do you think that Gerald knows he's dreaming? Sometimes when we're in a dream, we don't know we're dreaming until we wake up. And I think that might be what's happening to Gerald right now. So he says, what, where, when, how? So he's asking all of those really good questions that we ask when we read stories. And he asks them so loudly that Nuffle Bunny and Piggy go flying into the air. And again, the background is pale green. So we know he's still dreaming. And Piggy says, what are you doing? And I want you to look at Gerald's eyes. Do you see his eyes? The very center of his eye is red. Oops, on the other page. There, he's got red centers in his eyes. And that means he's probably feeling in the red zone. He's pretty upset. And it's confirmed by what he says to Piggy. He yells, I am trying to take a nap because I am tired and cranky. So those were the two problems in the beginning. Tired and cranky. So, and she's interrupting that. Plop. So he goes back to sleeping, or at least he's trying to sleep, but now he's angry. So he was cranky. Now he's getting even more angry because he knew that the solution was to take a nap, and Piggy is interrupting his sleep. And she's not done interrupting. Piggy has a really good clarifying question that she wants to ask her friend. She says, and a nap helps if you are cranky? Did you know that? Did you know that a nap can help you when you are feeling cranky and irritable? Well, Gerald, he doesn't want to explain the benefits of napping. He's just trying to get some sleep, and he yells, "Yes! A nap helps if you are cranky!" And it's in all capital letters, so we know he's saying it really loudly. And then it's also, this part is italicized. So not only is it in caps to emphasize it, it's also italicized. And that means you're supposed to say it with a lot of emotions, like cranky, like, oh, really, really. Look at his face, too. His eyes are squinched shut. His mouth is wide open because he's yelling and he's so frustrated, and his arms are wide, wide open. And then he realizes that that wasn't a kind thing to do to his friend. Remember when you're tired? It's not an excuse for being mean and rude. And so he says, "I am sorry, Piggy. I am very cranky." But when you're cranky, crankiness is contagious. So that means it kind of catches and spreads just like germs. And so if you're cranky and you're mean to other people, well, that will make them feel cranky, and then they might want to be mean to you. And so Piggy has now caught Gerald's crankiness, and she's upside down on her head, and her brow is furrowed. We talked about that in another video. Furrowed means like your head is creased. And so, ooh, she's not very pleased. And not only is Piggy cranky, but she is very cranky. And then she says, "Maybe I need a nap." And Gerald's like, oh. And he kind of caused this problem himself. He was being mean to Piggy. But remember, this is a good thing to pause, clarify, and check for understanding. So we still have the green background. Normally, the book has a white background. And when he started dreaming, it changed to a light green. And now we still have a light green background. So do you think he's actually talking to Piggy, or do you think he's still dreaming? I think we need to keep reading so that we can clarify our understanding to see if this is a dream or if this is what's really happening. So Piggy's going to take a nap too. And Gerald agrees. "Maybe you do need a nap." And she says, "I will take a nap too." So they're both really irritated and cranky and frustrated. All of those yellow zone emotions almost getting towards the red zone. They're getting lots of feelings, and her brow is creased and his brow is creased. They're like, oh. And so off she goes. Oh. But Piggy does something that makes Gerald feel good. "I like to nap with my special buddy." And can you see why she would bring that and why it would make Gerald feel happy? So Gerald sleeps with a bunny rabbit. Piggy likes to sleep with a stuffed elephant to remind her of her friend Gerald. So that's pretty sweet. Like if I was Piggy and I slept with Gerald, which I don't do because stuffed animals really aren't my thing so much. But if you have a stuffed animal you sleep with, I would love to hear about it. So she says, "I like to sleep with my special buddy." And Gerald blushes. And so that means he's a little embarrassed, but he also feels really happy because it means how much Piggy appreciates him. And so you can kind of see that he's glowing red and she's glowing a little bit red. And so that's just the illustrator and author, who's the same person in this case. It's Mo Willems' way of saying, oh, they're feeling really warm and safe and just feeling good about each other. So she's got that. And then Gerald might finally get his nap after all. And so he says, "Ready to nap?" And Piggy says, "Ready to nap." So both friends agree. They're not going to play catch like they have on other days. They're not going to play well ball. They're not going to throw the snake around and play catch with him. All they want to do is sleep. And so Gerald's getting his blanket ready, and Piggy says that she's ready to nap. And I don't know if your parents or guardians, family members tell this to you, but something that parents often say to children and sometimes just friends say to each other when they're getting ready to go to bed is sleep tight. So you get the covers all wrapped around your body and you're feeling oh so very cozy. And Piggy says, mmm. And Gerald says, mmm. So it looks like both friends are about to go to sleep. But remember, clarifying question, is Gerald already asleep? The background is still green instead of white. I don't know. Uh-oh. Friends, there is a problem. And I wonder if you can predict what it is. So sometimes when people sleep, they don't sleep quietly. Even though their eyes are shut and they're not awake, they might make some noises that are very loud. So I'm going to show you what that noise might sound like. And listen closely, and I wonder if you can tell me the name. So I'm going to pretend I'm in bed, and I'm going to make a noise. Do you know what I was pretending to do? I was pretending to snore. Now that is something that kids don't do very much, but when you get older, my granny and Grampsy, they snore when they were sleeping, and it was really loud, and my Gramps had a big low snore. And my granny had a little high-pitched snore. It was really funny to listen to them. It was kind of like music. But if you're trying to sleep and somebody is snoring, it's really hard to sleep. And Gerald, he doesn't snore, but oh my goodness, Piggy does. Snore! Snore, snore, snore. And it's so loud. It's even in different colors. Normally the speech bubbles are not in bright colors, but these are really bright colors just to emphasize how loud the snoring is. And Gerald puts his hand over his face because he's like, ugh. So if you do that, you put your hand over your face. What does that mean in your body language? It means you're like, oh my goodness, like, oh. But Piggy's not done. And Gerald has really big ears because he's an elephant, and that means he can hear lots of snoring. Snore, 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 snore. So it's like really loudly. And I don't know about you, but I have a hard time sleeping when there's a lot of noise. I like to fall asleep listening to audiobooks, but I can't fall asleep listening to music, and I definitely might have a hard time falling asleep if somebody next to me was snoring. And in fact, I'll tell you a secret. My dad snores, and he snores so loudly that before my parents can go to bed, my mom puts in earplugs. And so those are things you put in your ears to muffle the sound so that you can't hear noises as much. And that's what Gerald's trying to do here. He's using his big ears to kind of hold his hands to hold his big ears down because he does not like to hear the sound of Piggy snoring. It's so loud that it's preventing him from sleeping. Prevent is a word that's saying it's stopping, it's blocking him from sleeping. And his friend is sleeping. Oh, poor Gerald. And now it looks like Piggy might not be snoring anymore. Snurk, 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 snurk. So, prediction. Do you think that Piggy is going to sleep quietly now? Do you think Gerald will be able to get back to sleep too? I certainly hope so, because he's having a terrible nap so far. And also, like, it seems like this is something that could really happen, doesn't it? So I'm wondering if maybe we were wrong. Maybe he really is still awake. Let's keep reading. Oh, snore. And that is in a loud, loud voice. Right now, my roommate is upstairs sleeping when I'm reading this story, so I can't say it as loudly as I should say it. But in your house, if no one's sleeping around you, you could yell snore with me. 1, 2, 3, snore. Oh, that's so loud that both Piggy and her stuffed elephant go flying, and Gerald's ears are blown back. It's almost like her voice and her snore was like wind that blew his ears back. It blew his rabbit's ears back, and his tongue is sticking out. He's like, ah, this is terrible. But now Piggy's all cuddly buddly again. She says, How does Gerald feel? Look at his face. His eyes are wide open, and he still has all of those. They're called bags underneath your eyes, and they're not really bags like you could take your groceries home, but it means there's just your eyelids and the skin right above your cheek is sagging. So he's got saggy, baggy eyes. And then notice, so the background has been green and little white bubbles are happening here. Yawn. So this says yawn and little white bubbles are here. And she says, wow, what a great nap. I feel rested. I do not feel cranky. Now, I want you to think closely. And this is a good Quincy Questioner question. Do you think that Gerald feels nice and rested? So Piggy's rested and not cranky. But I'm looking at Gerald's face, and his face looks pretty cranky to me. I think he might not be feeling so good. And so Piggy asked him a question. She says, how are you enjoying your nap, Gerald? Now, if someone is talking to you, can you be sleeping? If they're trying to have a conversation with you, can you talk to someone who's asleep? No. So Piggy is preventing Gerald from sleeping, and prevent is the word that means stop. So she's blocking him from sleeping. She's stopping him. And we can tell how Gerald feels about that by the red asterisks around around and above his head, and also the squiggly yellow lines. So he's not too happy with his friend Piggy. And this is what he tells her. He says, I am not enjoying my nap, Piggy. I am not napping. And look closely. His eyes have turned red. Oh my goodness. And Piggy looks like she is trying to understand. She might need some clarification when her friend is that upset. And this is where it gets a little bit exciting. She says, but if you are not napping, how can I be floating? So Piggy, we know, has wanted to fly. She said, today I will fly, and she had to get help from a duck. But in this, she's just floating all by herself, and we might think that, well, maybe we could say that she's in outer space because astronauts float in outer space. Maybe that's why she's floating, but that doesn't make sense because Gerald is still on the ground. He's got both of his feet on the ground, and Nuffle Bunny isn't floating. Nuffle Bunny is looking at him like, And do stuffed animals normally look at you and like stand up with their hands on their hips? No. That seems strange. So there's a lot of strange things. Piggy floating, her stuffed elephant floating, and the stuffed animal of Nuffle Bunny staring and looking critically at Gerald. Oh, and it gets even more strange. And Piggy says, and why is my head a turnip? So a turnip, let's pause and clarify. I don't know if you've ever seen this when you've gone grocery shopping, but turnips are a vegetable, and they're a root vegetable. So they grow in the ground, and so instead of eating the top part, we eat the root. And carrots are a root vegetable too. We don't eat the tops of carrots, we eat the part that goes down deep in the ground. And so now Piggy has a turnip head, and even stranger, or equally strange, I guess you could say, now the stuffed animal is talking to Gerald, and the stuffed animal says, "Good question." And then Piggy starts singing. She says, "I'm a floating turnip head." And then the stuffed animals join in the song. They say, "She's a floating turnip head." And now, this is the page that really helps clarify what's been going on this whole time. So Gerald has been sleeping, and this whole book isn't what's happening in the real world, it's what's happening inside his brain. So now the dream Gerald, says, "She's a floating turnip head," and they sing, "She's a floating turnip head. I'm floating. Also, I have a turnip head." And so Gerald's dream that was a nightmare, it was a nightmare because he wasn't getting any sleep, at least he thought. Now he recognizes he's dreaming and he thinks it's funny. And so there's a slight smile on his face. And you can see this is the background for most of the story, that pale green I was telling you about. And now here's the white, which is the normal background for our stories. Yawn. And so normally if we're in class, I'll tell you, "Oh, cover your yawn," because it's kind of rude to do that. But if no one's around, it's kind of fun to stretch and give a big yawn. And now that he's awake, he's folding up his blanket and he's still got his Knuffle Bunny. And just like Piggy, when she woke up and yawned in the dream, she had little white bubbles around her. But Gerald, now that he's really awake in the real world, he has pale green bubbles, kind of indicating his dream is still a little bit in his mind, but it's mostly over. And so he's getting his blanket ready. And now this is the real Piggy because the background is white. And she says, "Oh, hi, Gerald. Did you have a good nap?" And this is what Gerald tells her. He says, "I sure did, turnip head." And I bet that Piggy is thinking like Quincy Questioner. There's a little question mark above her head. That means she's confused because is her head a turnip? And even though she was a character in Gerald's dream, it wasn't her dream. So she has no idea what he's talking about, and she's a little bit confused. And you can kind of tell that Gerald's enjoying confusing her because he's got his eyes like this, and his eyebrows are up a little bit like, I'm sure it did, turnip head. And turnip head is in italics, which means when you read that, you should really emphasize it. And so normally he would just say, "I sure did, Piggy," but because he dreamed that she was a turnip, or at least had the head of a turnip, that's why he calls her turnip head in the real world. And then I really love this because it shows not only Gerald, but Piggy and even Pigeon as characters with turnip heads. And so I don't know what you will dream about when you go to bed tonight or if you take a nap, but I hope your dreams are a little more relaxing than the ones that Gerald has. And so before we leave, I just wanted to summarize this story with you, and you can summarize it to someone who is in your house or nearby, and you can tell them what happened. So you can pause this and come back, or you can just listen now and see if I get the summary right. So Sammy Summarizer. So first, Gerald is tired and cranky. He decides to nap. He's dreaming, but he still thinks he's awake. And in his dream, Piggy comes and keeps waking him up with her snoring. Piggy can be a very loud pig. Then Gerald dreams that Piggy, instead of having a head like a pig with her little snout, he dreams that she has the head of a turnip and is floating, and he recognizes that he's just dreaming. And so the problem of him being cranky and tired goes away because he was able to have his nap. But he did confuse his friend Piggy when he said that she was turnip head instead. So I hope you really enjoyed today's story. It's really one of my favorite of Mo Willems' series. And check in again for some more videos. Thanks, friends.